Welcome back to the Community Podcast. I had so much fun last week with our first ever podcast. It was incredible. Just last night, my husband was asking me, he said, "What is your podcast about?" And I was like, "Oh, that's not something we get to know right now. That's not a right now knowledge base. That's a in the future we get to figure it out." And I love that. I'm really excited for what this might become. And I do know that I asked you guys in the comment section. Uh, sorry, my microphone is in my lap because I'm a very professional podcaster. I was going to say YouTuber there. I'm a very professional podcaster. So I am just, that's where it is today. It's fine. Um, I did ask a lot of you guys, what did you want to see? What do we want this to be? We touched upon friendships and like community and a little bit of loneliness last week. And a lot of you guys said that you wanted to talk about self-love, loving yourself. How do you get to a place where you really love yourself and you have the confidence to take risks because you kind of know that no matter what happens next, you're going to be fine. Just like I start the podcast, and if it flops, I'm going to be fine. And if it's successful, I'm also going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. The risk is not really that high here. So, thinking about self-love, loving myself, once again, I didn't think it all the way through. Like I don't have anything scripted. I don't really have bullet points. On a drive home last week, I did text myself 3 different thoughts, and I have an idea of where I was going with that because it was last week and I've already forgotten last week. That doesn't exist. So that's what I was trying to think about. And we're going to think it through together. And I'm just going to say the thoughts as they come into my mind. And there's a huge chance that I will say something that I believe. I'm like, okay, I think it's this, but that it doesn't have to. I'm not setting anything in stone. It's not super concrete. And I don't know that it's going to be very coherent. And that also doesn't matter because when you're trying to develop full thoughts, full wholesome belief systems, right? Because it's not just a thought, it's a belief system. I really believe that I love myself. And that doesn't have to be linear and clean and precise to be true. It can be messy, it can be vague, and it can change. And that's what the beauty of this is. So, one thing I've been thinking about is I don't even know what my kickoff thought should be. The first one that popped in my head was honesty. So I hold honesty and integrity to be my highest of all values, right? I think that if I can be honest, not cruel. That's something different. When people say, "Oh, I'm just honest," but then they say very, very mean things and they code it under the guise of like, "I'm just an honest person. I can't lie." Sure, you don't have to lie to have tact and compassion and kindness. I don't have to tell somebody that they're ugly. Like I don't have to be like, "Oh, you're ugly." You like that doesn't need to be said. You don't have to say like the awful thing. You can also say the awful thing and like cushion it. It's not sugarcoating. It's maybe not everybody needs the full force of your truth bombs detonated on them when they're in a vulnerable moment. When I'm talking about the honesty, I am thinking that I will only say something in private about somebody that I would say in public. That's important to me. Like I may not say all of the things, right? But I would say it. If I am struggling over here, I would say that same struggle to your face with kindness and compassion. But also, you have to be honest about yourself. Sometimes we lie very deeply to ourselves and in very toxic ways. One of the ways that I'm thinking of is like the lie that you're happy with where you are when there's something very significant that should change. And trying to lie. So, for example, and this drives people crazy because a lot of people hate the idea of you improving yourself in an area that they also could stand for some self-improvement, but they are far worse than you are. So for you to acknowledge my weight, I'm talking about my weight. When you acknowledge that I am it's a progress, overweight. I like the numbers were there. According to the numbers, according to my body fat percentage, I was obese. I happened to hide it a little. That might be self-delusion. To be honest, I think I hide it well, but sometimes when I look back in some of the outfits that I'm wearing, I'm like, you were not hiding it that well, right? But I tend to carry all of my weight in my abdomen. That's extraordinarily unhealthy. And I had to be honest to myself and say, I'm overweight and I'm not happy with this. A lot of people will be like, no, I'm happy in this. I'm fine. I'm confident. I feel great. But are you being honest with yourself? Is that the truth? Are you telling yourself the truth? Because a lot of people want to lie to themselves because somehow they think telling myself the truth means I have to have action in that moment. That's not necessarily true. You can just start with honesty and be like, I am unhappy with my physical health. I don't like where I am with my physical health. And I thought that for a while, and then take action. Sometimes there's another catalyst that forces you to take the action. Sometimes you just get into that momentum where you're like, okay, I've told myself long enough that the truth, I'm not happy. Now I'm going to take action. That could also be like in a relationship. You're like, this is fine. I'm fine here. This is great. But in reality, if you were honest, there were things that you should address about it. And that honesty would go very far with your partner because maybe they don't know, or maybe they have the same thoughts. Maybe they're also unhappy. But if you can open up the honesty of it, I'm not saying you have to be like, I'm unhappy, and then get a divorce, break up, run. You don't have to do any of those things, but you could open up honest communication. But you have to be honest with yourself. Am I genuinely happy in these various aspects of your life? And you don't always have to be genuinely happy. Sometimes you're in a situation and you can't really claw out of it in that moment, and it's okay to be sad about it. It's not okay to give up on everything else, but it's okay to say, this part sucks, and I wish it were different, but it's not. And I can find happiness in these elements, right? You can grieve the loss of what you thought you were going to have and then move forward. So if that makes sense, that's one of my thoughts about honesty. So I have to be honest. Am I happy with my health? Am I happy in my marriage? Am I happy with the life choices that I'm making? Am I happy as a mother? And happiness isn't the only thing. Fulfillment doesn't always mean blissfully happy. You can be fulfilled and still be in the thick of it, especially like early motherhood. Yeah, we're super happy, but we're also drowning and overwhelmed. It's really amazing and really effing hard. So you don't always have to be happy, but you have to have that honesty there. I think that's my thought on that, but I might loop back to a different thought somewhere in there. But that was the first thing. I'm like, okay, talking about self-love, talking about being honest with yourself and working forwards towards that. Another thing is this kind of ties into friendship and community and things like that, where a lot of women feel very isolated and they don't want to reach out for friendship. That's scary, which it is. It's scary, but I feel like it comes from a place of, do you think that you would be a friend somebody would want to have? Like, are you worried of the rejection? Like, are you hesitant because you don't think they want you as a friend? Okay, so and I was not that person for a while. Like, I had might still, who knows? I had a very grating, overwhelming personality that I had to learn to temper. And I know that sounds unhinged. If you watch my YouTube channel, you're like, there is no tempering of Beth's personality. She is bonkers. But that is because it's my YouTube. I get to do that, right? But I don't get to be there are times and places for things. Like, you can't do that in a work function for your husband. You do have to temper it a little bit. Why am I talking about this part? Okay, where am I? The friendships. Oh, I used to have a grating personality. I've tried really working on not being so self-focused. I've worked very hard on an amazing book, you guys, is who wrote it? It's not Alan Carr. That's How You Diet. It's How to Win Friends, Carnegie. How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a very old book. It's very dated, but it is fantastic. It stands the test of time, and I feel like it has made me become a better person. I'm looking off to the side because it is one of the books that I have in my library, and I really feel like it would be valid and important for me to tell you the actual freaking author of it. And I have a lot of books that I've never. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was a really good way for me to have initial engagements with people, right? Like the first impression, the first, how do we make this run more smoothly? And I love it. I love that book. You absolutely need to read it. I'm going to read it next after I finish the book I'm reading right now, which is about homeschooling. I will pull that one back in. It's worth revisiting. It's fantastic. So that's one of them. Like, am I a person that I would want to interact with? Am I somebody that I would walk away from a conversation being like, damn, that is one self-centered bitch? Or would I walk away from the conversation feeling good and being like, that was a great communication. There was a lot of give and take. She had questions about me. She answered my questions really well and honestly, and things like that. There are other things that you can do if you feel like you don't have a personality that is engaging or fun, like you just wish you were a little bit more. You can practice that. That is a skill you can build. That's not necessarily inherent. Like wit, kind of inherent, but it's something you can build. Being funny is something you can build, and it might sound artificial, but it's not. It's not. This technique is not artificial. So you can think back to an interesting time you had, an interesting story, and you can practice that story with different people. Don't practice it with the same person, they'll hate themselves. And you can find, like, you can drop the boring parts where you start losing interest of people, and you can find the parts where people find really interesting, and you can build that story and round that one really good story out. And then you have a go-to. If you're going to talk to somebody, you have a go-to where you're just like, here's a story that I feel comfortable telling. I feel like it has a good flow. It is a little bit funny, or it's a lot relatable and things like that. And you can have a couple go-to stories. And that's practice for when you're engaging with people where you're like, okay, I have something that I'm confident telling. If it turns to me, I'm not just going to die. Right? I'm not going to be like, oh crap, I can't believe people are talking to me. That's not, so you have those in your back, which is incredible. And then another thing is that people so much would prefer to talk about themselves than talk about you, that you can have those tiny little stories and then immediately engage with them on something about, like, what about you? Have you ever experienced something like that? Like, what is your really good story? Or if they say that's a really good story, you can say, thank you. It's actually one of my favorite stories to tell. Do you have a favorite story that you love telling, but just doesn't come up often enough? Like, tell me that story. Because they do. They have a story that they love telling. It just doesn't come up often enough. And then it's not you anymore. They're talking. You just have to absorb and listen and be engaged with them in the moment. And when you guys part ways, they're going to feel like it was a really good interaction, and you're going to feel confident because you had a good interaction. It's like socializing dogs. You want to have as many positive interactions as you can to build your confidence. Much like dogs. I think any animal, to be honest. Really anything. We don't have to be dogs in this scenario. You guys can pick whatever you want. Like, you can be a meerkat. I don't care. So that's one thing. Another thing is a lot of people, this is one of my text messages that I texted myself. And it was a friend of mine, and she was like, I really do want to talk more about self-love. Like, I really struggle with that. That's a hard thing for me. And then she proceeded to tell me this really incredible story that I can't believe she wouldn't have loved herself for it. So in this story, her daughter recently had babies, right? And That's incredible. We love that. Pregnancy, birth, we love this. That's so amazing. And it's such a crazy time. And it's been a few months, and new motherhood's hard. And her daughter is having a very hard moment, right? It's hard right now. And, and I was like, what are you going to do? And so she reached out and was like, do you need me? Do you need me? And the daughter said, yes, please come help. I need help. And she said to me, the mother, my friend, said to me, she goes, sorry, they're both moms in this scenario. I realize that now. Also, I am. Everybody involved is a mom, apparently. But my friend said to me, she said, I knew I saved up my PTO for something, and this is it. And I was like, how do you struggle with loving yourself? That is such a moment where she should have looked at herself and been like, I am amazing. This is such what a cool thing to do, because I promise you, if her friend had told the same story, she would have said to her friends, what an incredible person you are. That's amazing. I love that you thought ahead and you thought, I'm going to save this for a moment, and then I will be able to pour all of my support and love when it's really needed. And that's such an incredible thing, instead of being like, sucks to be you, or like, yeah, we all deal with that. Babies are hard. Suck it up, buttercup. Like, no, she had that thought and saved that time, the time off of her work. She had planned for this moment. And that is an incredible thing to do as a human. She is a great person. So why can't we call out our great features when I'm good? So I tell myself all the time, you guys hear it all the time, I am not joking. It may come across as this funny, cute comment, but when I'm like, I'm amazing. This is incredible. Like when this is not to blow smoke up my butt, but also I love blowing smoke up my butt. My neighbor and I interacted with each other at Hobby Lobby the other day, and she was having a hard time. And I remembered that. And the next time I was at a store that had flowers, I bought her flowers and I brought it to her because and she was like, this is so kind. And I was like, it is so kind. That was really thoughtful. I am a good person. I didn't say it to her face, because to her face, I said, yes, I'm better than you. Because I am a snarky butt all of the time. And she laughed. And then her husband's like, would you like some ice cream? And then I yelled at him because I was on a diet and how dare he? But also because emotions are hard and icky and I don't want them. But I did tell myself, I was like, that was really cool. That was kind. I am glad I did that. That is a good person who would do something like that. And so I constantly reaffirm myself when I'm doing something that I like, I would love to see in another person. I compliment myself on it. And if you tell yourself something enough, your brain will believe it. That's science. Go ahead and Google it. I don't care. That is scientifically speaking. We can. That's why gaslighting is so fun. Okay, hold on. Not relevant to anything, but I need to tell you guys this story. What was it? I was in the shower and my husband was coming into the bathroom and he has to announce himself because I will not know he's there and I will scream. And I'm very scared that I will jumpstart and fall in the shower and stuff like that. And so he yelled, hey, butthead or something like that. And I responded and he came in and made fun of me for responding to the name butthead, I think. And I can't remember what we were talking about, but he was denying something happened. And I was like, and now you're gaslighting me. We were playing. It was just a play. And I was like, and that is abuse. You're abusive. And then he said, gaslighting isn't abusing. And for some reason, I found that very funny. In the retelling of the story, it's not that funny, but it was, for some reason, the phrase gaslighting isn't abuse was wildly hilarious to me. Not funny. Leaving it in because I'm not going to edit this because I'm lazy. But what was I talking about before I went on a pivot about my husband gaslighting me? Oh, we can gaslight ourselves. So if you're consistently telling yourself shitty things, I don't know, just having negative self-talk where you're like, I don't really love myself. I don't really like the person that I am. Sure, you're going to find more of the negative things that you're doing. Oh my God, I'm so lazy, right? Okay, so I could easily, because I am a messy person. I'm going to stop pretending like everybody knows me from YouTube. And some people, maybe you just walked in here. Um, I am messy. I am catastrophically messy. I am a breath away from being on Hoarders messy. And a lot of it is because I don't clean. It's not I'm busy. It's not I have 3 kids. It's not anything. It's the getting up and cleaning is incredibly hard for me. I will see messes. Well, I won't see messes for a long time until they are so significant. And then I'm like, oh my God, that's going to take so long to clean that I'm paralyzed. Like, that's too much activity. I would have such a hard time doing that. I don't have a whole day to clean my whole house, and moderation's very hard for me. I want to do all of it or I want to do none of it. And that's really hard. And it could be so easy for me to consistently try to clean my house, constantly not have a clean house. It goes right back to where it was so fast, it feels like. It feels like later that day, it's a disaster again. And I could consistently tell myself what a failure I was because I'm a homemaker. I'm a trophy wife. But my house is awful. I should hate myself, right? I should hate that I am failing. I should berate myself for not getting up and cleaning. I should every single day when it comes down to dinner time and I still have not gone grocery shopping, meal planning, none of it's going to happen. And it's either I sucker my husband into cooking after he went to work for a full day or we order in. I should absolutely loathe myself, right? Those aren't things I love. I'm not excited about it, but I don't hate myself. I'm not a bad person. I would never tell myself I'm a failure because I will start to believe. I will say so many negative things about myself. So while everything is a disaster right now, like it is, I do want to clean. I need to clean my whole house, and that's fine. But I did get like a video ready for a sponsor that I need to get done and over there. So I fulfilled an obligation that was very important to my career goals. Ew, I have a career. That's gross. But it was important, right? I was able to engage with all 3 of my kids in a very meaningful way independently. I had some really good moments with them. My husband and I were able to have a really good talk about finances and talk about different goals that we have in the future. And so that was a good marital thing, right? You don't want to ignore things. And I have been consistently running a load of dishes and emptying them out. And I did catch up on a couple loads of laundry. Those are all incredible things. I am proud of myself. Every time I don't want to, and I do get up and I put dishes in the dishwasher, there's pots and pans that need to be scrubbed. I do need to clear off my entire counter and wipe it down, but I did do something and I'm very proud of that. And I self-talk the positive things. My personal worth is not tied to how orderly my home is at all. And I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time when people come in and they're like, you should have less things. You should be a minimalist. There's a lot of toxic minimalism, I feel, where people feel like they are inherently better the less stuff they have and the more ordered their life is. Like there's some sort of morality with cleanliness is next to godliness, correct? And so you are inherently a better person if your stuff is organized and you are tidy. And right now in our culture, tidy has to be minimal. That's really where people focus. I don't know what to tell you about that, but even if you have lots of items set in a nice area, people will be upset about your items. So right now, it's shifting a little bit, I believe, because also let's delve into something weird. Minimalism really did come from the rich and aspirational, the wealthy. We are peeking more into their lives, and the rich and wealthy stopped being opulent Rockefellers, right? We don't have portraits everywhere and tapestries on the wall and all of this gilded, gaudy, huge, immense, ornate, all of my things. Look at my things. I have these things, right? Because back then you had to have a lot of money to have things, right? And now when things are cheap, you can have things and still be poor, especially if you have debt. Like you can have things and Klarna your little heart away and you have all of the things. They're all cheap. They're trash. They're going to break. And the ultra aspirational wealthy, which we see into their homes now due to social media, they have few things. They have little, they have some, right? It's very it's very curated. It's all one kind of color scheme. There's not a lot of color. We're very neutral tones. But the sofas they have are $500,000. They have very simple clothes like capsule wardrobes, but everything in your wardrobe's $2,000. And so we have because we aspire to be those people, that's why minimalism trickled down to us. And instead of us having few pieces of high value, just because that's very hard to access, we just get rid of all of our things and we have some things and they're cheap, right? Maybe you have some nice things. I don't know. But I do feel like the majority of us, we're getting cheaper items. We have few of them. They break. We're not really investing into things anymore. That is a really big tangent. But anyway, so there's somehow this morality because there was this aspiration to be the rich and influential, to be a minimalist, and that you are better than over here. Now, I refuse to buy into that. I just do. There is no value of mine personally that is associated with my home. I think it's more comfortable when I'm able to clean my home, but I'm not a bad person when my home isn't cleaned. I'm not a better, more moral, valuable human after a whole house clean because I'm just going to fall right back off the horse, but that's fine. So no idea what started that thought process. Went into a weird tangent on how people put morals on things like that. Oh, so I could negative self-talk about that, but I choose to find everything that I like about myself and then I tell myself about it. And if I'm doing a voiceover, I tell you guys about it. I call out my amazing. And it eventually your brain will say, "Oh, she's saying it enough. Like maybe I am amazing." And you genuinely will start to believe it. Another thing I like to talk about, and this is going to go in a couple different directions because I have a few thoughts about it, and it's not something that I texted myself. So this is just bubbling to the surface. I hope you enjoy. What was it though? Let's sip our coffee real quick. I did get Starbucks because I had to run 2 errands this morning, and I had intended to give my neighbor, I got her husband to tell me his back in the day, remember? I gotta stop referencing YouTube. I did get my neighbor to tell me his wife's Starbucks order, and I wanted to surprise her with it one of the days, but Starbucks was down. And so today I happened to be right next to Starbucks. And so I did that today. So I got myself a Starbucks as well. Also, I was out of coffee this morning. That is not relevant to this. I was out of coffee, and I am deeply a prepper, and one of my biggest preps is coffee, and I somehow thought I ordered coffee and I didn't, and it was devastating, and so now I'm all discombobulated, and I don't know what we were going to talk about. What were we going to talk about, you guys? I was talking about telling myself, okay, we're back. I found it again. All right, here's the other thing I do is I also, as soon as I see something good about somebody did something good, somebody looks good, somebody clearly put effort in that day, I tell them. I do not care that they're strangers. I'm also an extrovert, so it's a little bit easier for me, but I do feel like this is something you should practice because we are also starving for compliments and affirmation. Everything's so negative. We love negative. Negative is delicious, right? We love it. That's another thing I'm going to talk about in a minute is the negative. And that's what we consume for the most part. It just is. We will find train wrecks on Instagram and we will follow what disaster they're doing. It's so much easier to do that than to find somebody positive and root for them. It just is. We also, I mean, like as a species, we love redemption stories, but that means somebody has to be crappy to start out with and then redeem themselves. Always in heroes, right? The hero is a hero, then they collapse under whatever crisis happens, and then they have to rebuild themselves. We want a good downfall. We love a solid downfall, right? So we have so much negative, but there's very little positive. So I like to find, if I see somebody and I'm like, man, her arms look jacked. I am so impressed. I start going up and I'm like, hey, super weird. Your arms look amazing. I can tell that you're putting a lot of work into that. And I want you to know I saw it and I love it. You're amazing. And they're like, oh, thank you. I compliment men. And that one's a little bit dicier, but like you try to find something and you can be like, hey, your blue eyes are startlingly stunning. I love that. And you can do it in a way that doesn't come across as hitting. You can, right? Maybe I feel that way because I will give anybody and everyone a compliment. So there is no intent behind that. Maybe it's a dicey game. I don't know. But like you can have some really incredible moments. For example, I was in Target like a year and a half ago. Doesn't matter. And there was this other woman in the lane a little bit, like we were close enough that I could talk to her, but she wasn't in my line. And she had a really beautiful shawl. And I thought to myself, she has a beautiful shawl. And this is when I was first implementing my campaign of compliments. And so I told her, I was like, hey, I love your shawl. What a beautiful, like, I love that. That's gorgeous. Where did you get it? And then she goes, oh, thank you. You know, I've had it for years. My dad gave it to me as a Christmas gift or birthday gift. And I was like, that's amazing. She's like, he's passed, but he always had such intentional gifts. And I love that about him. And I was like, you know, it feels like I love when they come to like say hi, because clearly he must have inspired me to compliment your shawl to let you know he's thinking of you. I genuinely feel like that maybe that's what happened. Maybe his spirit was like, get my daughter's attention. I want her to know that I'm thinking of her. And she was just like, oh my God, that's like, she loved the idea that her dad from heaven was like reaching out and just being like, hey, still here, still love you kind of thing. And I could see that it impacted her. And I was like, oh my God, this like really, I was like, I need to give more compliments. Like, this is incredible. Somebody could be having a hard day and you're just like, I just want you to know you look beautiful, like a mom's baby screaming. And you're just like, been there. I think you're doing a good job kind of thing. And it doesn't diminish. There's not a finite amount of compliments or kind things you could say or do. It's not a zero-sum game. I can compliment this person and still have a compliment for this person. It's not like sticks of gum. I'm not going to run out. Which brings me to another thing, and this one's more internal for you. They're connected, right? Is I do find that there are some people out there, and I've had a struggle with this myself. And what I'm trying to say is, if somebody gives someone else a compliment, it doesn't mean that you don't deserve the same compliment. Here's what I'm trying to say. For example, here, let's start from the example and then branch out, right? A long time ago, I talked about this in my first podcast, the first video last week's, where I had a community of mothers with kids who had severely autistic kids. Mothers with severely autistic kids. And these were my tribe, right? I found them, we bonded, we were in the trenches together, right? And we had done an event together and we took a picture after the event was over. We were very proud of ourselves, very full of ourselves. It had been an incredible moment and it felt like a really good thing that we did. And I took a picture and I put it on my Facebook before I deleted Facebook. And I was like, love these ladies. They have been so supportive during this journey or whatever crap like that, right? And then somebody else reached out to me and was like, I can't believe you didn't mention me. And I was like, you, what? And they're like, I've been supportive during this journey. And I was like, okay, but you weren't involved in the event we just did. You weren't at the dinner. You weren't in the picture. And it wasn't exclusionary of all other people who have ever come to help me. I was thanking these ladies. And so I have been on the other side of that where I've seen somebody be thanked and I was like, but I did that too. Why not me? Why wasn't I included? And the reason is that nobody's thinking about you. Like nobody thinks about you. And that's a beautiful, freeing thing. It's an amazing thing. But they are not saying, I bet I could hurt her if I exclude her. Like that event is not about me. Sometimes events are about me, but for the most part, 90% of things are not about me, ever. If somebody vague posts, remember when we used to call it vague booking? Maybe I'm old. But if somebody vague books about slightly dissatisfied with something, not you. It's not you, girl. Stop stressing about it. It's not you. If somebody is being a little bit bitter, grouchy, awkward, stuff like that, it's not you. They're having a different moment in their life. They're bitter about something else. Like you should reach out. If you did do something kind of crappy, reach back out and be like, are you mad at me? Did I hurt you? Can we talk about it? Right? But 90% of the time it has nothing to do with you. So you can't take things personally all of the time because you will be exhausted and sad. That's just how it is. Because I guarantee you're not taking 90% of the credit for things. If somebody was in a good mood, you're not like, I nailed it. Look at this makeup. That made that person over there smile. They're so happy. Look at this. Like I am, I made the happy Facebook thing. You're never out there being like, oh, that was about me. Yeah, I brightened up their day. I am the light in their eyes. I am the skip in their hop, right? Nobody does that. We only do the negative side. And the thing is that nobody's really that focused on you. Everybody's focused on themselves. So you don't have to worry as much. You can be free. You can relax. It's not that big of a deal because everybody's really focused on themselves. Everybody's self-obsessed, and that's fine. Kind of leads me into another thing about just like baseline happiness. You have to be happy. If you love yourself, you have to allow yourself to be happy. You can't trap yourself into a cycle. It's hard. If you're depressed, it's hard to love yourself. It's hard to love anything. And we're constantly drowning in being depressed. I had to cut that out because I was picking at something on my lip. Sorry. Okay, here's another thing I think that people have a hard time with self-love because how can you love yourself in such a world that is awful? Like how in these days, in these times, on this timeline with this evil, how can you love yourself? Now, this part might upset some of you guys. You cannot, no one can. And if you put this on yourself, it's going to break you. Not medical advice or financial advice. I can't care about every crisis that's happening. I can't. We've never been meant, like as humans, to know every tragedy that has ever happened. So this part is a little bit hard. It's hard because it makes you feel like a monster, right? But you're not, because you just can't obsess about every horrible thing. Because first of all, you don't know all the horrible things. And some of the horrible things that you just care a little bit less about because it's not like, for some reason, doesn't trigger that reaction inside of you, and that's fine. Like there are random things that I did care a lot about, and there are some things where I'm like, that sucks, kind of thing. But, and I'm not saying I don't think they're bad. I'm saying I could not put my emotional energy into it, even though it was an actual tragedy, right? Okay. One example, let's throw it way back, and this one's crazy, is I didn't care about the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. Now, this is my first time of me being like, oh, okay, I don't have any emotional energy into that crisis. And it was catastrophic. It was bad. I bet you if I went back and looked at some of the things, I'd been like, that's horrible. It would make me sick to my stomach. But I was deployed to Iraq and we had a significant event around that exact same time frame. And that's where my emotional energy was. I was very emotionally shut down for survival. That's just how that works. But that's where my energy was. And people would be like, did you see? Did you see? And I was like, no, I don't really pay attention to that. I don't have that in my radar right now. And that made me like, people are like, how could you not? And I'm like, because I don't have that. I'm not going to. And it makes me sound wretched, but I just didn't have it. And there are times where I intentionally avoid things like the Sandy Hook. I think I was either pregnant or just gave birth to my son. So that disaster, I did not focus on. I could not. I shut it out entirely. I was not going to consume any of that content because I was not emotionally available for that. And then it's just like things like that where you're just like, okay, I can't cry over every tiny thing. Like, cause like, what do you pick? Do you pick the tragedies for the humans? Do you pick the tragedies for the animals? Do you pick the tragedies for the environment? Do you pick tragedies, like which ones? Do a lot of people have to die, or do they just have to be locked up? Like, are we going to put equal energy in the Uyghurs being locked up in concentration camps as we are going to for the Israeli Gaza war? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And so there's only so much that I can pour my compassion into. And that makes people uncomfortable because it makes you sound like you're saying, I don't care, I don't have feelings. I do have feelings, I care very deeply, but I cannot pour all of my energy. So what I tend to do is I tend to be very emotionally available for family, of course, right? Friends, community, and like I divvy it out in the circle, the bands like that. And I have compassion, but I'm not crying and heartbreaking over it. It's like I try to not focus on it so hard. One thing that did get in, and I was like hyper devastated, and it really, really hurt. And I thought about it so much, and it was really hard, is when the withdrawal of Afghanistan and the Taliban coming back in, my deep fear, like my visceral reaction, still even now, I just got sick to my stomach for the very young girls, what their situation was immediately following that, and now what their lives look like. That one pierced through. Whereas typically I'd be like, okay, you know what? It sucks, but I don't have any political pull. There's plenty of awareness. Like, you can only donate to so many causes until you have to focus on your own. Like, I don't know. That's really controversial. I know people are going to think that I'm just saying that I'm heartless. I'm not saying I'm heartless. I'm saying that you do have to protect your own mental health. You don't have to be weak. You don't have to be fragile and bundle yourself up. But you don't have to care about every crisis to be a good person. You don't have to dwell and ruminate on the many travesties and tragedies of the world to be a good person. If you can say, maybe not that for my brain, you're okay. You're not a bad person. It's okay to do that. So yeah, that, and then kind of in the same thing, I glanced over. It's the last thing I had texted to myself. It was the first thing I texted to myself, but the last thing that I managed to like loop into this bubble. So this thought actually led to the compassion. It's not discompassionate to not care about every crisis. Like, you can back off of that. Like, if you took a break from social media, you wouldn't have to come to see all of that all the time. It's okay to step back. But so the thought that led into that, which somehow is coming in the end, I have to move my leg. Oh, my leg hurts so bad. But now I have to hold the mic stand because I was using my legs to hold it. The last thing is, it is okay to let go of friends who are not actually your friends. I know that we want to keep our friends and we want to be through the thick and thin, but sometimes you have friends that are not your friends. I will give you an example. I had a friend, she was my friend. This was a true friend, for sure. And we were almost inseparable. We talked all of the time, right? And we were in very similar stages of life. I was getting engaged and then married during this. She was married and had her first child. And we were very bonded. But then my family, I had babies after that. And that pulled me away a little bit, right? Because I didn't have as much energy to put on her. And I think that she didn't love that, right? And so there were tiny cracks that showed. And I remember a long time ago when we were just talking about random life, when we were still very close, we were talking about when people have ugly babies and like how you respond to that. And she goes, "Oh, I just say, oh, it's a baby." And I laughed, I was like, "Oh, that's funny. That's relevant for later." Not that I had ugly babies. I did have ugly babies because the twins were premature. And I don't care who you are. Your premature baby looks like a lizard. They are way better when they get body fat. Mine looked like lizards. I loved them. I thought they were very cute little lizards. Premature babies are not cute. Don't think that they are. Babies are cute when they get all fat and chunky, which they later did, and they were very, very cute. And they're beautiful girls today. So it was not about my children. But I did have my kids, and I didn't have as much time for her because it's hard having twins. Let me tell you that. And I was exclusively breastfeeding them, and I used to babysit her child all of the time. And I was very close to her kid. And once I asked her to watch the kids, not for very long. And when I came back, I was like, "Oh, did they eat?" And she said it would take too much effort to warm up the breast milk. So she dumped it out and fed my kids formula bottles. And I was like, like that was such a weird thing to do because it doesn't take very long to warm up breast milk. And it's very hard. That is a very precious resource, especially if you have two on the tap all the time. It's pretty hard to bottle some to distribute later. Let me tell you that much. And so I was like, that was a weird moment. That was a weird moment, right? And so there were other things like it just kept getting a little bit more distant and things like that. But the kicker was we moved and we got a house. We were very lucky. We bought our house. And I was like, "Come, look at my house," and stuff like that. And I was so excited to show her. And she goes, "It's a house." And I was like, "I know you. And I know that that's the thing you choose to say when you do not want to give a compliment." And it was like I saw in that moment that she wasn't my cheerleader. She was no longer in the corner with me, cheering me on. She was sniping me and undermining me. And she just didn't want me to succeed in areas that she wasn't currently growing. She was just in a hard moment. And that wasn't her forever. They were in a hard time and she was tasting bitterness. And so I released that friendship. Like we had moved several hours away. And so I just didn't engage as much because I couldn't spend my precious time with somebody who didn't want me to succeed deep down. And that hurt. But like, it was sad, but I am better off for it in the long run. Like sometimes you have to reevaluate who you have in your life. Are they reflecting negative to you? Are they undermining you? Or do you surround yourself with people who are legitimately cheering for you? And that's kind of an assumption to say because maybe you don't have people around you. Maybe you are so deeply lonely and that is a problem too. And I fully understand that. And so that's another thing I love about trying to find and build communities. So it's not for podcast community, it's for my YouTube channel, but we do have a Discord. I will drop the link in the description box for you guys. If you're lonely and you want to practice reaching out and talking to people, being around people who are legitimately cheering for you, who's supporting you, I want to provide that to you. I think it's a really good thing. And it could be practice for you reaching out, being brave, saying something to people, like being brave and reaching out, because I genuinely want you to know once you start really loving yourself, it's more reasonable to you that somebody else might love knowing you too. And you might be of value to them and they would appreciate you reaching out in friendship. Because I guarantee they're probably lonely too and just as scared to reach out for friendship. So it's very rare that you get somebody who is batshit crazy coming around, throwing around compliments and trying to ensnare friends. But that is a mission that I have made for myself where I'm just like, I'm going to find people I'm going to find the best, most supportive, most incredible women. I'm going to force them into friendship with me. And that is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to try very hard to be the sort of person that they would be like, yes, that was a blessing. I am so happy I met you. That's my goal, because that's somebody I would like to spend time with. And I have to spend all of the time with me. So I need to be somebody I want to spend time with. And so that's mostly my thoughts on what I've done, how I've worked on this. I'm sure there are things that I've lost and forgotten. I'm not sure how coherent this is, but besides the fact that I had to pick something off of my mouth and I did that gap, it's very important to me to do these in one shot because I want my authentic, actual thoughts to come out. I reserve the right to change my mind. I'm not solid in this. Oh, that's another thing we could talk about really, really quickly, even though I was wrapping up. It's fine. It's okay to change. It's totally cool to change. You can have like thoughts about who you are and you feel really good about it, and then things change and you don't feel as strongly that way. Or maybe I'm not that kind of person. Like maybe there will come a time where I'm like, I'm not going to be so open with everyone. Maybe I do need to have a smaller, closer, tighter inner circle and stop casting such a wide net. Because I've only lived here for a few years, I need to cast a broader net because I do want local to me friendships that I can interact with, that I can meet up with. I am so fortunate that I have friends here that I can call upon, that I can rely upon, that I can say, I need help, and they'll be here. And when they say I need help, I can be there. So I'm still in a season of casting a wide net, but maybe I will change my mind on that and I will be less open to continuously offering friendships. Maybe later I'll be like, you know what? Constantly telling yourself you're amazing is not exactly helpful. I could change my mind on that. Right now, I think it's incredibly helpful because I thought it up and I'm amazing. But I reserve the right to change my mind on literally anything at any moment, at any time, forever. And that is financial advice. So take that to the bank. But that's all I have for you today. I can't wait to see you next week, and I love you. Bye.